This is She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. Your host, Kinsey Roberts, interviews incredible women in the wedding industry who are making their mark and creating success on their terms. Join the conversation.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 145 of She Creates Business, a podcast for wedding pros. This is your host, Kinsey Roberts. Thank you for joining me today. I have kind of a special treat for you today, and this is something I've never done on the podcast before, but I wanted to do it today because it perfectly aligns with this time of year, and it is such a good segue into Thursday's episode where I'm going to share how we are adding in new revenue streams into my wedding venue and give you an inside peek of what that process looked like. So let me tell you about today's episode so I can give you some context there. I know that was all kind of ambiguous, wasn't it? Today's episode is actually a rebroadcast of my good friends, Lindsay and Heather from LVL Academy. This episode originally aired in September 2018. So almost a year ago as I record this, it is September 2019. And the reason I'm re-airing this episode is, number one, this is one of the most popular episodes in She Creates Business history. It has some of the most downloads that I've ever gotten for one episode. So I know it is value-packed information and it is evergreen. It's all about pricing, sustainability, and professional development in the wedding industry. And when Heather and Lindsay and I had this conversation, I was thinking to myself, I didn't know that it would become one of my most popular episodes. I'm not surprised by that at all. But I knew that what we were talking about would be relevant for years to come. So I'm re-airing this episode. And specifically, the other reason I'm re-airing this episode is because the revenue stream that we are adding to the wedding venue is to start to fold in day of wedding planning into Vista View events. Up until now, up until 2020, because the rest of this year we have still been outsourcing it, we require our clients to hire an outside planner, and we're going to fold that into our venue, which of course results in additional revenue. It also results in a bunch of other stuff. We'll go into that in episode 146. But anyway, and when I decided to do that, there are a few main places that I went to because, lucky for me, I've interviewed amazing wedding entrepreneurs. So I knew I didn't have to recreate the wheel and learn everything from the ground up. I knew that there were a few key places I could go to become a wedding planner that I could be proud of, right? And LVL Academy is one of the first places I went to. They have an online shop, and I picked up a couple of their digital PDFs, their training programs for wedding planners, and I'm so glad that I did. And there's a few other places I went to. I'll talk about that in episode 146, but Lindsay and Heather are the first place that I stopped at because they have been planners for years and years, and I knew that whatever products they were putting out would serve me really well. And from the second I opened those products, I was like, yep, this was a good decision. So I want to talk to you guys really quickly about their in-person planner education. It's called LVL Academy. It's happening this year, 2019, November 12th, 13th and 14th in Orange County, California. It is a 3-day panel, hands-on learning, networking, and inspiration you need to elevate your own career as a successful wedding planner. So if you're currently a wedding planner, this is for you. If you want to become a wedding planner, this is for you. If you're like me and you own a wedding venue and you want to start folding in those services into your into your venue, but you want to do it right, because sometimes venues drop the ball on that, you guys. I'm just going to call it like it is. You want to do it right. This in-person conference workshop is for you. So again, this is LVL Academy. It's the Lindsay and Heather's in-person training. It is 3 days, you guys. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit about their experience. Between the two of them, they have over 25 years of experience. They've done over 1,500 weddings. what? Now you can see why I went to them, right? They've spent 7 years developing this curriculum, and they've taught actually over 150 plus wedding planners. That's a lot. So anyway, wanted to share that with you. I'm going to put links in the show notes. We talked about this last year. We talked about LVL Academy, and then I had some listeners who came back to me and said, I'm so glad I went there. I'm so glad you introduced me to Heather and Lindsay. Even if they didn't head to the workshop, they got some of their digital products like I did over at lvlacademy.com, and they feel the same way that I do. But if you're in California, if you're interested in traveling a little bit this year before the end of the year because you want to have a bang in 2020, LVL Academy in person, November 12th, 13th, and 14th in California could be for you. Again, hear me. I will put everything in the show notes for you. Or if you have a question, you can't find the show notes, I totally understand. Shoot me a DM. I'll answer you, point you in the right direction. I'm at She Creates Business. So without further ado, let's get to the episode with Lindsay and Heather. This is all about pricing, sustainability in the wedding industry, and professional development. And just as a reminder, this is a rebroadcast from 2018. So any links might be deprecated or resources, but I've put all updated information in the show notes of this episode. Let's get to it. Lindsay and Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. This has been a long time coming. We talked about this, everybody. So I talked to Lindsay and Heather, oh my gosh, eons ago, probably in the spring. It's September. I can't believe it's September. It's September 8, 2018 as I record this, but I talked to them months and months ago. Then I took, as you know, an unintentional hiatus for a good 4 months. And so I'm finally so happy to have both of you on here because this conversation has been a long time coming, and we just did kind of like a pre-call, okay, this is what we're going to talk about, and my mind is exploding with questions. So I cannot wait to get to this content because I cannot think of a duo more apt to answer these questions than Lindsay and Heather. But before we get there, really quickly, I, of course, always read that professional bio there at the top of the show. So everybody has a pretty good idea about who you are and what you do, but I would love for you in your own words to tell us who you are, what you do, kind of make it the 2-minute hot seat, and then we'll dive right into what we're talking about today. I know you guys are great at choosing who goes first, so I'll let you decide.
Sounds good. This is Lindsay. I'll take the lead on this. So my background is a little unique. I am from the Midwest. I grew up in the Cleveland area, and I always grew up loving planning parties. I really always was drawn to leadership roles in high school and college, but I never thought that I could make a career out of event planning. It just wasn't something that I was ever brought to my attention. So I went to University of Dayton and graduated with a communications degree because that's what I'm good at, talking to people and connecting with people. And I moved to Chicago after college and jumped into corporate America. I was in recruiting. Corporate America, 9-to-5 job. I always joke that it was my khaki and polo wearing days. And it wasn't for me, and it wasn't something that I was passionate about. But the one thing that I always sort of went back to was hospitality and customer service. Mm-hmm. And I decided one day that I was going to call every wedding planner in Chicago. And I landed myself a part-time job working for a planner there. And it was after my first wedding that I did on my own that I realized after, I think it was maybe a 14-hour day, and I went out to the bar and had a few drinks. I was younger days. I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. So fast forward to today, and I've been doing weddings since 2007, and that's when I started my business out here in Southern California. And we've also been training aspiring planners and experienced planners for, I'd say, the last 5 years, seriously. And then Heather and I met sort of, I think, about 3 years into my business, and we became business partners. I don't know when. Heather would know because she's the process person and she knows a lot of numbers, and I always forget. So,
and I'll pick it up from here. So hi guys, I'm Heather, and I had a unique start to weddings in the fact that I worked for a bridal salon at 17. So I was in high school, and a family friend owned a bridal salon in Camarillo, California, where I'm from. And I worked for her, and I hung up dresses, and I steamed them, and I helped people try on their dream dresses. And it was kind of in those conversations that I started to find out that weddings were something really special. And Then after high school, I went to school at Long Beach State here in Southern California, and I needed a job where I could work full time and put myself through college. So I fell into catering, and catering was the best opportunity for me to really be friendly with people and take my outgoing personality and a little bit of a bossy personality and pair that with something fun. And so I worked at a catering company that primarily did weddings, and I was doing weddings as a server, and I hated it. So I kind of weaseled my way into a in-house coordination position 6 months in. I was 19 years old, and I really have just been in love with weddings ever since. And I did that for about 5 years. I was doing anywhere from 3 to 5 weddings a weekend as their in-house wedding coordinator. So I really got a ton of experience really early on. And then after 5 years, I wanted to start my own company and kind of got the little entrepreneurial bug. So I did that, and I put up my website and didn't know what to do from there. So luckily, a friend of mine introduced me to Lindsay, and Lindsay and I sat down for coffee, and we talked about our hopes and our dreams and our love for weddings. And I kind of joke we've been together ever since. And so since then, we've been building a team of planners here in Southern California, Napa, and we do weddings in Hawaii and Mexico and worldwide.
And so what year was that you developed your business together?
So LVL Weddings and Events was founded in 2007, and
Okay.
Heather and I met in 2010. Yeah. And, at that point I was starting to get double booked on weddings, and I am it's like my entrepreneurial brain was like, I can't let these go. I can't, this is how I'm going to grow my business. So I said,
Right.
Heather, do you want to do this wedding for me? And then it's like, hey, do you want to do this wedding for me and this wedding? And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I said, finally it came to a point where I was like, do you just want to join LVL Weddings full time and let your business go? And it just kind of worked out. And then we worked together, for 5 years before we decided to partner. And I think it was funny. I was on another podcast talking about the fact that I never really thought I wanted a partner. And I think the best way for me to go about finding the perfect one was to actually work with that person in and out with no expectation, and then realizing, okay, well, Heather totally complements my weaknesses and vice versa. I'm definitely the idea grenade thrower, and Heather's the process-driven picker-upper, so it works out really well.
Yeah, we kind of joke that Lindsay, I love that she's now using that term as well. We joke that Lindsay has idea grenades, where she comes in and she's like super fired up about something, whether it's growth in our business or some sort of marketing idea or connecting with people, and she comes in fired up and then kind of runs off to the next shiny excitement thing. And I usually am the one that I'm like, okay, let's slow down. Let's put a process in place. Let's figure out the long-term sustainability of this plan. And so we make a good team. But kind of just piggybacking off what Lindsay said, I didn't join up with LVL to become a partner. I set out to work for her because she was passionate about building a team. And I knew I just wanted to do weddings. I wanted to do what I loved and what I felt really good at. And it was through working together and realizing that I had strengths that would help a business grow and flourish. I think because I went in without that expectation, that's part of why we make really good partners.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to cut this out, but it looks like I'm on mute and I'm actually not. So, okay, keep going. Okay. I'm going to start over really quickly and respond to that, but I just wanted to make sure you could hear me because I was like, oh God, they're going to stop talking and I'm going to be like, oh shoot, what? Okay, so you were meant to be partners, and oh my gosh, I wish we had another podcast episode, because as you may or may not know, I have a partner in the wedding venue, and that has been it's been amazing, and I'm glad I have a partner, but it's definitely been such a learning curve and an opportunity to grow as a person and a business owner. It's not easy to be in a partnership, but I really appreciate how your partnership has such a fluidity to it. I can just hear it in your voices and how you talk and complement each other. Does it feel like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask this a really quick question and then I'll get to the actual topic of this actual episode, but does it feel like you've had to really work on that, or did it come naturally? I know you worked together before you officially partnered up, but tell me a little bit more about that, because I think that's important for a lot of people to hear.
I think that we really got lucky. I think because, like I said, I went in without the expectation of being a partnership, that by the time I sat down, I remember taking, kind of dragging Lindsay to lunch and being like, here is what I want from you, and here's what I want from the future of our business. And, partnership is a big part of that. I think I knew I was in a safe place to ask that. We had built such a long-standing mutual trust and respect that conversation, no matter how it went, was going to be okay. And then in terms of managing other people and the partnership through, finances and hiring and firing and everything in between, I think we've always been able to kind of go back to that feeling, like no matter the conversation, however it goes, it's going to be okay. So I think in some regards we're really lucky. And then in others, I think, kind of growing up together over the past 8+ years, we know each other. Like, I know when to not push the topic when she feels super adamant about something. And I think vice versa. I have stronger opinions than she does. And she's really good about kind of helping me see the other side. And there's times where she's kind of overexcited about something that might not be a great long-term decision. And I've learned how to kind of show her the other side. So I think a little bit of both is probably the answer.
Yeah. And I think it's honestly very similar to a marriage, that it's hard work and you can't ignore it. And there's been times where, we've let things sort of go unsaid, and then but eventually, we have those hard conversations and you get to the other side. So, I mean, it doesn't come without hard work and being intentional, but yeah, I definitely agree.
I love it. Okay, well, thanks for answering that. I'm always curious about partnerships. I have a special, my own special unique curiosity about them. So thank you for that, ladies. Okay, so as Lindsay and Heather already know this, you guys, and of course I know this, but I want to let you know a little bit about how this episode is going to go, because we will be covering 3 topics in this one episode, and I'm really looking forward to it. So let me tell you just a little bit about how this episode is going to go. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how long it takes us to get through each of these. To be honest with you, the 3 of us agree these could all be their own episodes, but we're going to stick them in one show. The first topic we're going to cover is pricing. The next topic will be education, really what we need to know as planners and beyond. And then finally, sustainability, which is really kind of like the sister to pricing. And that's really kind of the pinnacle of business, right? Is being able to have that longevity and having that profitable, sustainable, consistent business. So we are going to dive right in. Let's start with pricing, you guys. Oh gosh, there's a lot of places we can start here. Let's start with a couple of okay, let's do this. What are 2 things you see the industry doing right in pricing? And then we'll talk about those. Then we'll follow up with that with 2 things you see the industry doing wrong in pricing. And then we'll go on from there. So let's talk about those 2 things that we're doing right in this industry.
Well, I'll sort of take the 2 things that I think I see planners doing right. I think there are some planners who are really raising the bar and setting a standard, and you can tell they're valuing their services, and most of them are charging a percentage or a very high flat fee, and they're mostly doing full service planning. And I feel like I am seeing more of that even from some of the students that are coming through the academy, which is really amazing. And the students who came into the academy, who maybe which is our 3-day in-person workshop, it's maybe they come in saying, I'm not charging enough, but when they leave, we are seeing them change their perspective and start charging more. So I think that there's definitely this shift of people recognizing the serious planners who want to be creative entrepreneurs and have a sustainable business, really shifting their mindset. And what's crazy, I was just speaking to Annette Stefanian, and I guess Wedding Wire just came out with statistics for 2018 wedding industry, and I have not seen it, but she shared with me that, they talk about, they list out wedding vendors, and statistically wedding planners are in the very kind of mid to low part of the wedding vendors that you select, and the average price is $1,700 for a wedding planner. Yet the planner is the one producing the entire event if they're doing full service. So it's just very eye-opening, which then segues to probably what we see some people are doing wrong, which I'll let Heather share her insight on that.
Okay. Yeah, and just to hop back on the positive too, I think what I am seeing that is positive is the desire to have this conversation. We did a Facebook Live a couple weeks ago, and people and planners, they want to be talking about how to do better and how to raise their prices and how to value and how to get the right clients to pay those prices. So I think that's better than before, where it seemed very hush hush and no one talked about their pricing with other people. And so I would say that definitely goes into the positive.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, and sometimes I think that, as a venue owner specifically, I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. As venues, I feel like we sometimes keep things really close to the chest. Because it's like, oh, we can't talk about our business. And this isn't everyone. I don't feel this way, but I feel like other venue owners I see do, like, we can't talk about what we're doing or how we're pricing or what's going on in our business because everyone's freaking out and they don't want people to know. But in the other parts of the industry, and I think that might be because we're seeing this surge in the last decade of privately owned venues, but in the other parts of the industry, like planners and photographers, things are a lot more open, it feels. And this conversation is a little bit easier to have. But I think it kind of just lifts everyone up. So I'm excited that you see that too, that people are just open to being like, sure, let's talk about pricing. I'll just tell you everything I know.
Yeah, and I think too, my question would be to anyone, no matter what role you play in the wedding industry, what would be the problem if everybody had similar pricing and we all knew each other's pricing? Because I think then in the end, the couples would be picking the venue that's perfect for them, the planner that's perfect for them, the photographer. So I would kind of challenge to change the way people are thinking about keeping that close.
That's right. So good. Okay, so tell me what you see people doing wrong.
So I think it's really easy to jump into that one because unfortunately, so many wedding vendors and planners specifically just undercharging. I know people that are working for such a low rate that if they broke down their hours spent and their hourly rate, they should be working at McDonald's. And that's unacceptable. This is an important role in a wedding day, whether we are the full service producer from start to finish doing service planning, or we're a coordinator that's really making sure that all of their investment falls into place. Mm-hmm. I think that is a crucial role and it should have a value. And unfortunately, if the industry as a whole, if we don't value our time and our expertise, then why would couples expect to pay any more than the going rate if the going rate is so low?
And what do you feel like undercharging is? And a second part, kind of the tertiary part of that question is, how do you feel like location in the country plays into, quote, undercharging or being at the right price?
I think that's a really great question. I sort of go back to the basics of who's your ideal client and what market you're in. So, you have to recognize, if you are going after a Louis Vuitton bride or if you're going after a, Target bride. And so, this is so, I don't want to quote Annette Stefanian throughout this whole pod, but we were just having conversation.
She's been on the show before. It's fine. You quote away.
She gave me this great analogy of, she uses cheeseburgers as this analogy of pricing. And she said, you can get a 99-cent cheeseburger from McDonald's, or you can get a $30 cheeseburger from a 5-star restaurant. But what's the difference is how is that cheeseburger made? What are the ingredients? What are the expectations of what that cheeseburger provides the person that's ordering it. So I think that would be my answer to that question. And in terms of the market, yeah, it definitely plays there's a factor in there. And we've actually had our own experience. We had 2 planners work for us, and then one moved to Denver and one moved.
Hey, Colorado, represent.
And one moved to Scottsdale. And I thought it would be very easy to transition our brand to both of those markets, and it wasn't. It was so tough, and one worked, one didn't work at all, and one sort of worked. And, I think there's obviously more factors in that than just the market and pricing, but I think a part of that was, we can't charge the same in Orange County as we do in Scottsdale. It's just a different market, a different client. So then you have to figure out, okay, well then backtrack of, okay, what am I actually charging for my services if you were to break it down hourly? Because ultimately I look at the services that I provide as a product, and you have to look at it that way in order to know if you're going to be beating margins and building revenue and building wealth. And that took us a little while to really understand and figure out.
Yeah, and I think if you really look, I would encourage planners to start at $25 an hour, $50 an hour. More experienced wedding vendors and planners are, $100 to $250 an hour. And really track your time. Track your time for one project. See how much time you're putting into something, and then, multiply that by whatever your hourly rate is. And I think one of the failures that I see people do is your hourly rate, it shouldn't be what you think you want to take home, because it's not your take home. You've got your other expenses, your assistants, your overhead, your taxes. So really it probably needs to be double that.
Well, how do you coach clients when you're at the academy or when you're doing your online coaching and courses? When someone is struggling with their pricing or they want to increase their rate, how do you help people kind of arrive at the right number? Or what's your kind of let's maybe take 3 top tips for coming to that price that can help us be profitable?
Sure. So I think it's really understanding the numbers that you need to make. So whether you're, say you want to make $50,000, you probably need to sell $100,000 or whatever that is. So just knowing your numbers. But I would say for a lot of people that my first tip would be to inch up slowly. So many people are scared to raise their prices because they just don't believe that they'll do it. So I was coaching someone recently and I told them, when you have 4 weddings a month, if that's your goal and you've exceeded it, then your next lead that comes in for that month should be 25% higher. Just try it out. But I think the number 2 is you have to believe in your value. And so many people don't believe they're worth that higher price. And then the third would be being able to paint that value. I think, I'm something that comes fairly easy to me is explaining how Lindsay was saying, what's the difference between a low dollar cheeseburger and a high dollar? Well, if you can paint the value of why you're worth the $30 cheeseburger, you're going to get paid that. And so I think if you have all 3 of those things where, you inch up slightly, you really believe in what you're worth, and then you're able to paint the value of why you cost that, that's going to be the recipe for success.
Aside from telling someone, face to face, this is why I'm worth what I'm worth, what are some ways that we can express what we are worth in our copy, on our website, on our social media? Do you find that those are helpful ways to also communicate your value and your worth and what you offer? Or are you like, no, you have to sit down and have this face-to-face meeting, otherwise there's no other way to do it?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. I think that I would say it's your brand and marketing strategy, which is how you're communicating your message and your copy that you're using, the photos that you're choosing to put on your Instagram feed and on your website. You better believe we are handpicking the weddings that we're putting on our website, and we're very particular about the weddings that we choose to put on our Instagram feed and the photographers that we're using. We want to make sure that we're using the photographers that align with our brand. Even it could be like and this has like happened before, we've had the most epic wedding, beautiful details, but the photography wasn't in line with our brand and we can't show the photos, which is just, sometimes it just happens that way. But so I think it's definitely a blend of all of those things. You have to be able to sell and communicate your value and why you're different, but then you also have to show it in, other ways via social media and, where other people are seeing you. So the other thing is, that's where you have to be really particular about who you're partnering with, what photo shoots you're doing, if you're doing any, and aligning with the right creative partner team to make sure that your brand is always up to the standard that, that you're communicating to, potential clients.
When you're just starting out, and I feel like I can speak to this because we're only in our second season as a venue. When you're just starting out, it can be hard to, I think, really honing in on your brand. I think that's almost kind of like a living document because you learn so much, especially in your first couple of years. And you continue to learn, I hope, as you go throughout your business. But I also think that, I'm kind of like a you don't know until you try it kind of person. So what do you recommend? I mean, you said something so smart, and I know I'm going to say it one more time because I hope you guys heard. You don't have to use every photo from every wedding or every photo shoot. It can be something that's like, that was fun and it was amazing, but you don't have to put it on Instagram if you don't want to. If it doesn't match exactly what you were thinking, or if it doesn't feel good to you, you don't have to use it.
Yeah.
It's like freedom. But so I had a quick question. When you're just starting out, especially for our newer planners and newer vendors who are listening, how do you make the choice? I mean, is it really just a matter of trial and error? I feel like part of it is, but is it also like, I really do need photos. I really do need to make connections in the industry. But it's difficult to kind of pick and choose until you actually have worked with someone.
Sure.
Yeah, I think honestly, this is a great topic because we have, because we've been in business for so long, we've had quite the era of different parts to our brand.
Totally.
And what's interesting for me is I came onto the brand when it really reflected Lindsay, and it did for so many years, but yet I was a big part of it as well. So I think to answer your question, I think it's a bit of trial and error. I think it's important to put up something that's really reflective of who you are and where you want to go with your business. And then I think it's important to also check in with yourself on who are you attracting? Are they your ideal client? Are you booking that type of client here on out? And if that's not working, then it's time to reinvent the wheel. And I will say that, 10 years ago, we didn't have the same sort of access to looking at smart brands and how they use social media and how they select images and photography. And now I think that's so much easier to see how successful brands do that and kind of mirror that. And then I think that being true to yourself we went after kind of a very middle market for a bit, and that was something that was very reflective in our brand. And so that was a little bit easier to stay consistent with because it applied to a larger audience. So if you are going after more of a niche market, you want to make sure that you're really strategic in how you represent your brand. And having a brand strategist or hiring someone to really reinvent your brand each time that's necessary is absolutely worth the investment.
Yeah, but I also think that's an evolution, I was thinking about this today. When I first started my business, I said yes to every single thing because I just wanted to build relationships. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to experience. I wanted to know what I didn't know. And I knew that it was going to come, maybe not always having my ideal client, but I call it like my hustling days. And so I then started to shift into, okay, I really want to service middle market at a higher volume. And that was something I was passionate about. And then now we've evolved into now Heather and I and our team really wants to focus on only full service and a more of a luxury planning experience for our couples. And that's just the evolution of business and figuring out your own goals and wishes and time and all those things just change. And you always need to, like Heather was saying, just check in and know that that's okay. That's just part of, I think growing a business. So, and not staying stagnant.
Definitely. And not being hard on yourself that you weren't where you want to be now, because I think those stepping stones are so crucial to the journey of a business and the journey of, individuals, that I think if you figure out where you want to go next, start working on that, but don't beat yourself for not being there yet.
Okay, I'm literally writing out what you just said because I want to make sure it gets in the show notes. It was such a good quote. Those stepping stones are crucial to growing a business. That's your tweetable, so there you go. Oh, it's so true. Oh, this is so good. Well, probably should have blocked out 2 hours for this interview, but there you go. Okay, I kind of got off on a tangent about branding, but I really do. I mean, I think it's all related to pricing, right? I mean, we just talked about how your brand reflected a middle market. Now it's more luxury, high end, and I imagine that you rebranded your business a little bit and the way it looked at that point. So that's a great lesson.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Any final thoughts on pricing? I bet you have a ton, maybe a couple that you're like, we cannot get away from the conversation of pricing without chatting about this.
I think my final thoughts are to look at that conversation as I always look at it as the rising tide lifts all boats. I think if we all can help each other build because it's about confidence and about valuing your expertise. And you can only be confident if you are educated and always learning and growing as a business owner and a wedding planner, wedding creative entrepreneur. And so I think always having open conversations and helping other people want to be better, and that ultimately will make our industry better. So I think, having that community over competition mindset has, for me, that's what's always gotten me to the next level of my business.
Absolutely. And I would just say that, and Lindsay touched on it as well, is confidence is the key to charging more. And so if your goal is to raise your prices, if your goal is to charge more, you need to become confident, and that's what you're worth. So what do you need to do to get there? Is it to do 5 more weddings? Is it to do 10 more weddings? Is it to go to a workshop or an education program? Is it to work at a certain venue? Go do the work for yourself to make sure you feel confident to then charge what you're worth.
Brilliant. Okay. All right, we're going to move into education, which this nicely ties into it because we talked a little bit about one of the mistakes that people make in pricing is that they just kind of don't know any better because maybe they just got started, they're not confident in their pricing, and I feel like all of these things could be mitigated with education, kind of what we really need to know to be a successful planner, but also really to, as you said, lift the industry as a whole. So I would love to talk about what you both think are really crucial, because let me step back. The reality is we're really in a unregulated market. You don't have to it's not like being a planner is like being a lawyer. You have to go take the bar to be a lawyer. There is no, you have to take the planner bar to be a planner. Anyone could do it, literally. But I don't think everyone should do it. And if you do plan on doing it, I think it should be like anything, and you should get the proper training or at least have the proper information before you get started. Again, so that we can kind of keep the industry moving forward and not stagnating or worse, moving backwards. So let's talk about how you guys feel about education. I know you're passionate about it. I know that for sure. And then let's move into kind of what you're doing to help planners move forward in their businesses and really have that strong, confident, I know exactly what I need to be doing at this wedding feeling.
Sure. So I think when it comes to education, I was really, really fortunate. I had a couple mentors in my first job that really showed me the way to do the job well. there was a process, there was a checklist, it was easy to follow. And when I started my own business and started talking with other planners, I realized that wasn't necessarily everybody else's background. They weren't necessarily trained. They just kind of started doing it. And a lot of planners come from other event backgrounds. And I think that there is an easy crossover there, but I also think that it's assumed that it's easier than it really is. So often people are in the corporate world, or they do planning, in some other form. And then they're like, oh, well, I can be a wedding planner. And they just start taking weddings. And so I think that is one of the biggest disservices they can do for themselves, for that couple, and for the industry as a whole, because weddings are their own beast. And I think they deserve that sort of focus, because couples shouldn't have planners learning on their wedding day. Sure, we all learn a little bit every time, but I think if, I hired a professional for my wedding day, I want them to know what they're doing.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can add to that. I mean, when I first started, the only education option was through the Association of Bridal Consultants. And and I
told you to tape down your aisle runner.
It did. I got a white binder with black and white photocopied papers. Now,
yeah, you did.
I feel as though not to, their ABC does great things in the industry, so it's not to discredit them. I just think that education standard has always been lacking. And I think part of it is because it's hard to teach what wedding planners do. It's very hands-on training. So I don't think anyone's really grasped the right formula of hands-on, to, textbook, etc., worksheets, those sort of things. And so I think it's just shadowing. And then, so I think it sort of just took on its own beast. And it's, part of the, I don't know if it was not even an issue, but some planners are doing it on the side part-time. And I wanted to have a legitimate business full-time. I'm the breadwinner. Let's be a boss lady. So I was trying to figure out on my own how to make that work and to figure out, I didn't really have any resources of how much should I charge and what should I do. So I just kind of made it up as I went along. So, and the one thing that started to happen is I started to complaining about the state that the wedding planning industry was in. And instead of complaining about it, that's when Heather and I decided, let's do something about it. Let's just change the way that wedding planners have a perspective of starting their businesses or growing their businesses, and help them have resources and for us all to work together. And not saying that we should all be charging the same thing. We shouldn't. Everyone has a different business model and ideal client, and it's not just about pricing. It's about integrity,
standard of excellence.
What is our job? What's our role? What's the difference between a coordination and planning? What's the difference between local planner versus destination planner? I mean, there's all of these, so many topics that really just kind of go on and on. So I think just the lack of that since I started 10 years ago, I think finally we're starting to see a shift in that. But I just think that it really, with education, with community, we really can change the way our industry works. I mean, this is a really insane fact and this is when I had an epiphany moment. And I think if there were more education, I probably wouldn't have learned it the hard way. I did a wedding, and for full service wedding, and the photographer charged double what I charged.
Oh boy.
And not saying that the photographer shouldn't have charged that, but I should have charged more. I think that a planner's role when they're doing full service in managing an entire wedding budget, when it's in a very high, number, that's a big responsibility, and totally. You should be, paying and charged accordingly. So, I think, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
So tell us about, I feel like this is such a good time to talk about the Academy because it really grasps, it kind of just like wraps everything you guys just said in a bow, and it really grasps what planners truly need to run their business, like you said, like a boss. Like, this is full time. This is my thing. It's not a side gig. You guys, you know that I am not against side gigs at all. Like, let's be clear about that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, even if it is, we should still have what you just said. I love the way you just said that. It made me like so excited. I was like, yeah, get it. So talk to us about the Academy. Like, what goes on there, and why do you think that is such a great resource for the planners who come and sit and learn from you and listen to everyone you bring on the stage? Let's talk about that and dig in there.
Well, we're excited to tell you, Academy really is a passion project. We started building a team, and in that process, we needed to be able to train them. And so I would sit down with them for 4 hours once a week, and we'd go through what it meant to be at LVL and what that looked like, and all the things that they should know. And we started realizing that training wedding planners is really hard.
That's rigorous, yeah.
It really was. And there are so many things that just don't work in a classroom format. And I think for years, we've all kind of relied in this industry on internships. And an internship with a wedding planner and then being a lead wedding planner is so vastly different. And so we tried to come up with a format that we felt really allowed people to learn everything we know as much as possible in a short amount of time. And so we started doing the workshop format, 3 or 4 years ago, and it started at 2 days and now it's at 3. And we put our heart and soul into the curriculum. It's truly everything that we've learned up until even a week ago. And so it's a great opportunity for us to be an open book with those who come and listen. And we have incredible speakers, whether, photo, video, floral designers, and hair and makeup, and different people to come give a great perspective of how you can be the very best planner when you work with all of those people. So it's something that we're super proud of, and we hope that we can slowly shift the tide of how planners start their business, and they can be far more successful being educated.
Do you feel like there's ever a time, when we're first starting our businesses, if we're only in kind of the first couple of years, it feels easy to transition and pivot, but there might be some ladies listening who maybe they're in like their 5th or 6th year, or like you, they've been doing this for about a decade, but they know they need to shift because they want to make more money or they want to serve a different clientele. Have you seen that? And if so, do you feel like that's harder or easier? Kind of talk to us about how those, more experienced planners can still take advantage of education in our industry to make the changes that they want to see in their own businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. We recently worked with, we did some personal coaching with a client of ours who had been in the business for over 5 years, mm-hmm. and was thinking about transitioning, growing a team, had some ideas, but really needed some process integration. And so we came into her business and evaluated where she was at. Obviously, we spent 2 days, really honing in on, some of those hot topic items, and then giving her recommendations. And then in the end, she decided to come to our in-person workshop knowing she was the most experienced planner there. I think the one takeaway from the in-person experience for her was just a validation of the things that she was doing right. I think we all need that to, just make sure we're going in the right direction and doing things, the way other people are and that are successful. And then seeing how some people are doing things different that may actually work better. So I think most planners have never been formally trained. So whether you're experienced or not, I think being around a group of people who are all like-minded and have very similar career goals and aspirations, I think it breeds to cultivating change in a really good way. So I think that's one of the things I've seen the most when we looked at, from someone just starting out to someone who's been in the business a long time.
Mm. And one of the things that both of those times or people share, no matter how long they've been in the business, is that sense of need of community. And that was something that kind of happened by accident. We didn't realize that, like us, there were so many planners and wedding vendors out there that wanted to be able to sit down and grab coffee or talk to people that felt the way you did and wanted to talk through what it was like to have this challenge with a client or to have this interaction with a vendor. And so I think that actually has been maybe the very best takeaway of what we've started doing with LVL Academy is really connecting planners with each other.
Absolutely. I think there's nothing like that brain trust of people who feel the same way you do. It's almost hard to explain. You can't explain the value until you have it. And then you ask yourself, geez, how did I go this far without having this?
Yeah. We have a really cool story. And actually it's kind of how we evolved and started growing a team. We decided, I think it was maybe a year after Heather joined my team, and we created a mastermind group of like-minded planners, and we would meet once a month. It was just 5 or 6 of us, and we would talk about business practices and read business books, and it was sort of a safe place to come and commune and talk. And it was through that mastermind group that I recognized there was such a lack of a team approach in the wedding industry, and I wanted to start growing a team. And I would have never gotten there. I would have never realized that if we didn't open ourselves up to meet other people and to have a place to, brainstorm. So.
Yeah, and it was through that same group that I realized I didn't want to run my own business. I wanted to work for someone else. So I think there's, major changes can come through really sharing and talking and learning and growing with others.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Of course, that was the perfect decision for you. But had you not joined the group, you wouldn't have known that. Maybe you would have. I'm sure you would have come to that conclusion, but not as fast, and you wouldn't have found each other. Oh,
exactly.
Okay. So, any final thoughts on education before we move on to our final pillar of this episode, which is sustainability? Anything you want to touch on that we didn't get to?
I think the one thing that I've learned throughout my just evolution of being in business is that every time I've ever invested in myself, whether it's hiring a mentor or a business coach, or Heather and I just went to Tony Robbins last year, all of these are investments. I've always walked away with something, and I've always taken my business to the next level. So I think sometimes we get nervous to make those investments. I think as long as you're doing your homework and you know who you're hiring, I think they can only make you better, and you'll see a return on your investment. So
Smart. I'm so glad you said that, because it's true. They are an investment, but they are worth it. I'm sure a lot of people listening on this podcast, you've invested in some kind of education, and whether it was worth it or not, I hope that it was. There are other opportunities out there. So don't stop trying, even if you've had a few bad apples, because once you find something like the Academy that is just so worth it, you will be so glad that you stuck with it. Okay, we are going to talk about sustainability. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, this is kind of what we're all reaching for, even if this is just, if not, and I don't mean just as in it's just, but even if this is your side hustle or it's a side business and you intend to keep it that way because you love your full-time job, or you want to be a boss and you want this to be your full-time thing, sustainability is applicable to all of us, because if you want it to be a side hustle, I'm guessing you want it to be a side hustle for a reason, whether that be a creative outlet or you want to make extra money. Sustainability plays a factor into all of that. So let's talk about ways we can make our businesses sustainable for the long term. You've been in business, for over 10 years. And so there's so much you could share on this, I know, but let's kind of talk about maybe your 3 to 5 best tips for creating, starting, growing a sustainable business.
I think one of the things that just sticks out to me is surrounding yourself with good people.
Okay.
I think that you are the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And, that goes for my personal life, but also in my business life. So I really am particular about the people that I allow into my business, my team. I always say I only hire good humans, so and again, I'm not, we all make some hiring mistakes and things like that are just lessons learned along the way. But for the majority of the decisions that I've made, I feel like I've really surrounded myself with people who just are good, and that helps to help you along those rough patches because they're going to happen. So I'd say that would be my number one. Heather's raising.
She's raising her lip. My turn.
And then I think for number 2, it's kind of the same advice that I would give to someone who's just starting, and it's do your job well and be nice. I think that there are, when you're just starting, it's so important. You have to do your job really well. You need to be nice to everyone you come in contact with. And I think it's the same for sustainability. I think a lot of times when people start to do really well, they kind of forget the fundamentals of really just be a good human and do your job well. And if you do your job well, I think the business will continue and more business will come to you. So just kind of not to forget the basics.
Yeah. And I think that segues into treating people, no matter what, whoever, because when you're on an event day, there are so many moving parts. And the last thing I want to do is take credit for the wedding, because it's not all me. It's the, photographer, it's the banquet server, it's the bridal concierge, it's the valet. I mean, there are so many people who have a huge part in making this whole thing work, and treating everyone with the most respect you possibly can, because that will come full circle. I recently received one of my biggest client referrals through a babysitting company that we use here in LA. And it's not that I work side by side with them on a wedding day, because they're in making sure that the kids are taken care of. But I always make sure that they have food and their babysitters are treated well. And I think that goes a long way. And sometimes planners can
minimize the support team.
Well, yeah, and just sort of because you're a leader in a leadership role, you have a responsibility to be humble. So I think that is a big part of sustainability.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is that I think a key factor to sustainability is strategy. And so really making sure that there are strategic choices behind big business decisions and small ones. Something as simple as really making sure that you're tagging and crediting all vendors when you post in social media. Now, 1, that's just the right thing to do, but 2, that spreads your marketing efforts that much further. So just really making sure that, all decisions, big and small, have a strategy behind it. You're not just running through your week, just full speed. I think that's quickly how there's burnout or businesses fail. So making sure you have a plan.
How do you think that pricing, I know when we were offline, you said pricing and sustainability really goes together. How do you feel like pricing your business, and I guess it goes into your strategy too, but tell us how you help clients understand how pricing and increasing their pricing and charging appropriately will impact their sustainability.
I think we learned, a couple years into our business the hard way, is the simple fact, if you don't know your numbers, you are not going to have a sustainable business. Many of us might be in this for a creative outlet or because our passion for weddings or whatever it may be. But the reality is you cannot continue if you don't turn a profit. And so sitting down with your numbers and making sure that there is a profit and then pricing and charging appropriately, I think at the end of the day, no matter what, you have to have that.
Yeah, I concur.
Awesome. Anything else? I feel like those were so great. You guys just really bounced off of each other. Anything else we want to talk about sustainability that I didn't touch on or you didn't touch on?
I don't think so.
I mean, we touched on it a bit in kind of the other two, but I think just community over competition is just so important that I find when you're really out there networking and how you can help others versus how you can help yourself, I think that's another key to sustainability.
Well said. And it's also just a key to sustainability in life, friends.
Right. Totally agree. Selfishly, it gives me more inspiration to help others than myself.
So well said. Oh my goodness. This has been amazing. I'm sorry I kept you a little bit over time that I said I would, but I couldn't stop. And so my apologies. It was about 15 minutes longer than I said it would be. I hope that's okay. But I wanted you guys to keep going because this was incredible. Anything else you just want to touch on? Gosh, you guys have so much experience. Is there something that you just want to say, hey, all of you planners and vendors listening out there, or do you feel good? I feel like you guys covered so much. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel good. I mean, I think the one thing is just, however you need to continue to affirm your confidence in what you're doing, go and do that, because I think ultimately that's, where sometimes people get tripped up is their confidence and fear gets in the way. And so just surrounding yourself with people that lift you up and are positive and are good influences in your life. And ultimately, I think that will take you really far. So that would be my last little LVL nugget.
So good. Lindsay, Heather, thank you so much. Before we hop off here, I would love for you to tell everyone how they can connect with you.
Well, you can find us at lvlacademy.com, and you can just send us an email right through our website. We are also on Instagram at LVL_Academy, and always look forward to hearing from people. And there's nothing that we, no question that we would ever not be able to get back to. We love hearing from people and knowing what people are struggling with so that we can potentially add that to a blog post or add it to our curriculum. And that's the best way to reach out.
Perfect. And those links will definitely be in the show notes. Thank you again, ladies. It was truly my pleasure to have you here. I hope you have an amazing night. And if you want to connect with Lindsay and Heather, go just scroll up a little bit on your podcast player and you'll find those links directly in the show notes. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to She Creates Business. Please take a minute and head to iTunes to leave an honest review so we can help more wedding pros find the show.